As a dietitian nutritionist with a focus in PCOS and insulin resistance, I often get asked for sample meal plans or what I eat in a day to balance blood sugar. And while I'm totally happy giving my own examples and insights here and there, I find it's often most helpful to show my patients and clients how to fish versus giving them the fish. In other words, it's more helpful to have general guidelines to help my patients and clients follow so they can be successful no matter what they eat, no matter if they're at a restaurant or at home or on vacation or at someone's bar mitzvah. It doesn't matter, these tips can apply anywhere. So today I want to take you through a walkthrough of breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, and dessert, and share with you some tips and strategies to balance your blood sugar all day long. Insulin is a hormone that does a lot of different roles in our body, but when it comes to food in particular, what it does is it takes the glucose from our bloodstream after we eat food into the cells for use. So it's kind of like a key to the door of our cells so we can have that energy constantly flowing in at a steady rate. And what can happen when our insulin is not working properly is called insulin resistance, where our insulin just isn't doing its job properly, and so the blood sugar stays high in the bloodstream, and thus we can develop things like diabetes and irregular weight gain, and it can be really difficult to lose that weight with high insulin in our bloodstream. You may see this with diabetes, pre-diabetes, and things like PCOS, which I talk about a lot on the channel. All right, number one, let's start with breakfast. Breakfast is so important for blood sugar management because it's gonna impact how you feel and your energy levels and your blood sugar highs and lows for the entirety of the day. So you wanna start off strong. Number one, thinking of coffee. Coffee is not a standalone breakfast. You must have a meal before you have your coffee so you are not crashing an hour later. It's not good for your cortisol, which can impact your insulin and blood sugar, so just don't do it. Second, what I want you to think of is getting a high amount of protein in early on in the day. Studies have shown that the higher protein that we have in the morning, it helps regulate blood sugar, not even for the next meal, but all throughout the rest of the day. So what I like to aim for is about 20 to 30 grams of protein. That's usually a pretty good number and reasonable to hit while still feeling your best and avoiding those lows. And you might ask, okay, how do I get that then? Because that's a pretty high number and normally I don't get that, Katie. I love to add protein to my breakfast. So luckily, breakfast foods are pretty simple to add protein to. Things like oatmeal, smoothies. If you make your own breakfast muffins, you can add a couple scoops of protein powder and supplement protein that way. Another thing I'm a really huge fan of is protein shakes that are already pre-made, especially with postpartum breastfeeding hunger. It hits really strong for me, so I need something to supplement my diet. Fairlife Protein has 30 grams of protein per shake, so this is a really good one if you want to get on the higher end of protein. Orgain also has some really good protein shakes as well. Finally, for breakfast and really for any meal of the day, you want to consider fiber. So anything like oatmeal is going to be high fiber. Dave's Killer Bread has usually about 5 grams per slice, which is really good if you're going to have avocado toast or something like that. And if you need a supplement, you can do something like flax seeds that are ground up, or chia seeds are a really good supplement. We have fiber to make sure that it steadies out that blood sugar curve. Not a bad thing that it goes up in the first place, but we want to make sure it has a slow come down because that's what sustains our energy and keeps us from crashing and feeling that brain fog. All right, so next up we have lunch, and it's really not that different from your emphasis at breakfast. Really, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, your core meals of the day are always gonna be having the same type of theme. You want about 15 to 30 grams of protein and at least 4 to 5 grams of fiber at each core meal of the day. And ideally, you have all 3 macronutrients at these meals. That includes carbs, yes, protein, and fat. If you can include some sort of produce like vegetables or fruit, that's gonna also add to the balance of your meal. So no, this is not a no carb type of video. Sorry to disappoint, or happy to excite you if that's a good thing for you. But I don't believe that insulin resistance is best managed by a super low carbohydrate diet. I think that it's more about managing the carbs that you have, making sure that you're pairing them with the right foods, proteins and fats to steady out the blood sugar, and also focusing on complex carbohydrates versus simple carbohydrates or simple sugars to make sure you get that fiber in. So what's something simple and effective that you can do at lunch to hit all these marks? At lunch, I am a huge fan of wraps. I just get the Mission tortilla wraps, the whole wheat version. These have 4 grams of protein and 5 grams of fiber, so you're already hitting that fiber mark with these. I like to add a little spread. Sometimes it's hummus, sometimes it's another sauce or something like that. Usually I don't go too heavy on the sauce, so I don't really care if it's ranch or if it's chipotle mayo or if it's hummus. It's just something to add a little fat and fiber, if it's hummus, to the mix and add a little flavor too. Then you want to have your produce, something like a buttload of spinach or peppers, sweet potatoes, cucumbers, really any vegetable that I have chopped up in the fridge or that I have available to me, I'm gonna be stuffing into a wrap of some sort at lunchtime, usually with a protein like turkey or chicken, beef, really whatever I have on hand. You can also do this vegetarian style with chickpeas or black beans if you like a more vegan or vegetarian option. Another dietary fat that I would add to lunch is something like this salad mix from Costco. I have been loving adding this to my turkey wraps just to add a little texture and also to add a little dietary fat to, again, slow down the blood sugar curve. Next up, we have snacks, which I like to joke are my favorite meal of the day. I'm a big snacker, and that's actually not a bad thing for blood sugar management. Oftentimes when I ask people if they snack, they get defensive and say, oh, no, I don't snack. I'm usually pretty good. And for blood sugar regulation, I actually condone snacking. I find that eating regular, consistent meals is a lot better in the long term for insulin resistance and glucose management. So you folks that eat 1 to 2 times a day, I am talking to you. Having more snacks may sound counterintuitive, especially if you're trying to maybe manage your weight and you think that that's going to cut out calories. But typically what happens when we cut out snacks is that our blood sugar goes through this big dip midday, and then we end up overcompensating at dinner or after dinner with some extra sweets. So it's really being proactive with your hunger versus letting it get out of hand and go crazy, and then you have this big giant meal at the end of the day that ends up spiking your blood sugar anyway. One thing that I've been really obsessed with lately is a little cup of Chobani. This is the 0 sugar, and you know, there are other types of yogurts that I like. It's not just the low calorie, low sugar one. This just happens to be the one that was at Costco and it tastes good. But I love having it with some nut granola. And I actually got this from New Trail. They gifted me a whole box of their nut granolas and I'm absolutely obsessed. I'm not gonna lie, this is not sponsored, but I absolutely love what I've tried so far. Essentially, it is full of sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, coconut, pecans, almonds, and then it has a couple extra things like flavorings and erythritol for a little bit of sweetness, not a whole lot. With your snacks, I think the key focus, I would say, is making sure that you have carbohydrates so you can increase your energy levels, and then also pairing it with some protein or fat or both if you can, depending on how big your snack is. So carbs and either protein or fat or both. I would argue for this one, you might have a little more carbohydrates somewhere, maybe add a banana in there because this is really low carb and this really doesn't have any carbohydrates in it, hardly any, 9 grams. So I would say you could add a banana to this or something else if you still feel hungry, but that again is gonna help you lift up your blood sugar and then also keep it steady. And to finish off this video talking about dinner and snacks, we're gonna end where we began. Nice and dark outside thanks to the crazy weather, so I feel like it's like a spooky story time now. So dinner is really not gonna be a whole lot different than lunch. Very similar structure, but maybe a little more cooking, obviously, because usually this is when we're all together with family and having a little more established meal. You're still gonna wanna stick to your protein, your carbohydrate, your dietary fat, and of course, something like a vegetable on the side, which technically fits into the category of carbohydrates, but usually we wanna focus on something like a non-starchy vegetable like broccoli or carrots or zucchini, whatever your favorite veggie is. I just got my HelloFresh shipment in, and that's something that I usually use here and there as a staple so I can get a little more inspiration and try new things, because Glenn and I often get in a rut with dinner, and that's just the way it goes sometimes. So it's good to have a meal planning kit sometimes to just kind of shake things up. Here's one thing I will add about dinner as well. I like to say that if you're gonna have a more carb heavy meal, like sometimes people ask me, should I focus my carbs early on in the day versus later? I would prioritize earlier on if you're gonna pick one. You know, my typical answer is spread them out as evenly as possible, but if you have a meal like pasta or something where it's just higher carbs and that's what you prefer, then I would prioritize that at lunch, and then at dinner, focus on the non-starchy vegetables and protein. And then when it comes to dessert, I think the best time to have dessert is after dinner, directly after dinner, when you have something on your stomach and it can kind of sit with that protein-rich meal with the veggies. It's easier on your blood sugar than if you were to have it on an empty stomach. It's also easier to manage your portion size, which is directly correlated with how it kind of affects your blood sugar and also how much food you're willing to consume on an empty stomach versus on a full stomach. But that's just a little added detail there. I think that's something that people often overlook with dessert. So don't have that Cheesecake Factory cheesecake on an empty stomach. Have it after you've had a substantial meal. Another reason that I put dessert last is because I find that if I get myself started on sweets early in the day, it can really affect me all day long and make me feel brain foggy and weird to the point where I feel like I'm having dessert multiple times a day. You know, not that that's like a horrible, morally wrong thing, but it just doesn't help me have the best energy that I want to have. Well, I hope this video helped give you a really in-depth look at what you can do to manage blood sugar all day long. Hopefully it wasn't too long and boring, but let me know what questions you have in the comment section below. I want to hear from you. Also, make sure to check out my links in the description box for everything that I recommend for blood sugar management and other things that I really love as well, my favorite products, my affiliate codes, things like that. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.